I didn't go to the company gala because I liked galas. I went because 2 days earlier, our legal team had forwarded me a calendar invite with a subject line that didn't feel like a celebration at all. Attendance requested. Client relationship continuity. That's corporate language for show your face, smile, and don't let the people who don't do the work take credit for it. So I rented a tux. I memorized names. I rehearsed the polite answers you give when someone asks what you do, and they don't actually care. And I told myself it would be harmless. Just one night, one ballroom, one speech. Then I'd go back to being the guy who makes problems disappear quietly. I've always been good at quiet. I'm not the loud closer. I'm not the guy who pounds a table. I'm the one who sits in the back, takes notes, follows up, and keeps the relationship alive after the champagne is gone. The funny part is, people mistake quiet for small. The gala was at a downtown hotel. Marble lobby, heavy curtains, branded step and repeat wall by the entrance. The kind of place where the lighting makes everyone look important, and the music is just loud enough that you can't hear the real conversations unless you lean in. I arrived early on purpose. Early means less performance, more truth. At the registration table, a coordinator in black handed me a lanyard and pointed to a foam board seating chart. Name? Evan Carter, I said. She scanned her list, smiled like it was routine, then leaned forward a little as if she was about to share a secret. Oh, yes, you're here. And she tapped the board with her pen. Not the center of the room, not even near our team. She tapped the far edge of the layout, behind a thick drape that separated the ballroom from the service corridor. I assumed it was a mistake. Sorry, I said, keeping my tone neutral. That's table 47? She gave me the look event staff give when they're trained to never admit fault. It's what we were given. That's when I noticed something. Next to my name, in small printed text, was a note. Special placement, per VP request. My stomach didn't drop yet. Not because I didn't feel it, because my brain refused to assign meaning to it. I walked toward the ballroom anyway. The closer I got, the more obvious it became that table 47 wasn't a table in the way you'd imagine. It was a cocktail height round, shoved near a curtain where waiters were staging trays of glasses. No centerpiece. No place cards for anyone else. Just mine, taped, not placed. Evan Carter in all caps like an airport gate announcement. I stood there for a second holding my jacket over my arm, listening to the room. People I recognized were already laughing. Executives I only knew from email signatures were taking photos with their spouses. Someone from finance was making a joke about the stock price. Someone from sales had his hand on a client's shoulder like they were lifelong friends. And then I saw him, Victor Harlan, our new VP, hired 6 months ago, imported from a competitor. The kind of guy who introduced himself by listing the companies he'd transformed. He wore confidence like it was a uniform. He collected attention without trying. He'd been on a small internal tour lately, meeting key people, which mostly meant he'd been walking through departments, making jokes about titles and headcount. Victor spotted me standing there and grinned like he'd found a prop. He walked over with a drink in his hand and stopped just outside the curtain, in full view of the room. "Evan," he said loudly like we were friends. "There you are." I forced a polite smile. "Looks like my seat's back here." Victor's grin widened. "Yeah," he said, nodding like it was the most reasonable thing in the world. "I figured you'd be more comfortable. You're not exactly front of house." He gestured around the ballroom. "This is a leadership-facing night. Optics matter." Then he leaned in slightly, lowering his voice just enough to pretend it was private, while still making sure I understood the power move. "You do good work," he said, "but you're not the story. Don't take it personally." It wasn't a mistake. It was a decision. And what made it worse wasn't the placement, it was the casualness. Like humiliating me was just a line item on his agenda. I could have argued. I could have found the coordinator and pushed until someone fixed it. But I've learned something in corporate life that no training course teaches you. When someone tries to humiliate you in public, it's never about the seat. It's about seeing whether you'll flinch. So I didn't flinch. I nodded once. Understood. Victor clapped me on the shoulder, hard enough to feel like ownership, then walked away. I took my phone out, not to film, not to post, just to open notes. Time, place, names, what was said. Because if you've survived long enough in an office where egos get promoted faster than competence, you learn to treat moments like that as data. I sat down at my little staged corner table, while a waiter brushed past me carrying a tray of champagne. From where I was, I could see almost everything. I could see the executive table. I could see the clients seated near the stage. And I could see Victor walking around like he was hosting the whole night. Then the CEO got on the microphone and started the speech. The usual gratitude, the usual family, the usual record year. People clapped on cue. Halfway through, the CEO praised the teams behind our growth. Then he invited Victor up to say a few words about operational excellence. Victor took the mic like he'd been born holding it. He smiled, waited for the room to settle, then pointed toward the far edge of the ballroom. Right toward me. Before we get too sentimental, he said, we should recognize the people who keep things running. Some of them so far behind the scenes, we had to seat them behind the curtain. The room laughed. Not a cruel laugh, but a comfortable one. The kind that says, we're safe, because it's not us. Victor chuckled too, like he'd delivered a perfect line. I smiled politely, lifted my glass slightly, and let the laugh pass through me without touching anything. But my hands were steady for one reason. I already knew Victor didn't understand who he was trying to turn into a joke, because if he had, he would have been more careful. I was still staring at the stage when my phone buzzed. One notification, then two. Then my screen lit up with a flood of messages so fast it looked like a system error. A company group chat I rarely opened, mostly used for congratulations and pictures, was exploding. Someone had posted a screenshot. It had my name at the top, my employee ID underneath, and a single line that didn't belong anywhere in a public chat. Estimated net worth, $400,000. And the message below it said, is this our Evan? At first, I thought the screenshot had to be fake. Not because the number was wrong, because the number was too specific to be a joke. It wasn't 40 Mallender or 35 Mallers. It was $400,000, the kind of figure that comes from a spreadsheet, not someone's imagination. The group chat kept updating so fast I couldn't even read everything. What is this? Is this from HR? Why does it have his employee ID? Is this legal? Did someone just dox Evan? I stared at my phone while the room around me kept clapping for Victor like nothing had happened. Behind the curtain, a waiter leaned down to adjust a tray stand, glanced at my screen, and then immediately looked away like he'd seen something he wasn't supposed to. My first instinct wasn't panic, it was calculation. Because if a number like that hit the group chat, it meant one of two things. Someone leaked it on purpose. Someone didn't understand what they were holding and pressed send anyway. Either way, I wasn't the only person exposed. I slipped my phone into my pocket, stood up, and walked out of the service corridor into the ballroom. Not fast, not dramatic, controlled. I made a straight line toward the side of the stage where our internal comms team was stationed. Two people with tablets and headsets monitoring the live feed and the official Gala posts. One of them, a woman named Tasha, saw my face and immediately knew something was off. "Hey, are you okay?" she asked, stepping closer. I held my phone out and angled it so only she could see the screen. Her expression changed in a way I'll never forget. It wasn't shock first. It was fear. "Where did you get that?" she whispered. "It's in the all-hands chat," I said. Tasha's eyes flicked toward the executive table like her body did it automatically. "Oh my God," she said. That's not supposed to be public." I kept my voice calm. "What is it?" She swallowed. "It looks like a pull from the internal comp and equity workbook." That phrase hit harder than the number. Internal comp and equity. Not a rumor, not a guess, not a hack. A workbook. Something that lived inside our systems. Something only certain people should touch. I leaned in slightly. Who has access? Tasha didn't answer right away. Her eyes kept bouncing between me and the executive table, like she was deciding whether telling me the truth would get her fired. Then she said it anyway. Victor asked for a custom report last week, she said, for optics, for the Gala. He wanted to know who was overpaid, who had outside interests, who didn't fit the brand. I felt my jaw tighten, not because I was surprised he'd asked, because he'd done it with the same tone he used when he called my humiliation optics. Who built the report? I asked. Tasha hesitated again. Finance ops. It was pulled from multiple sources. Equity filings, benefits elections, some public records, and she stopped herself. And what? I said evenly. She lowered her voice to almost nothing. And a vendor risk tool that estimates personal wealth for compliance exposure. For conflict of interest checks. I stared at her. A wealth estimate tool. That wasn't just inappropriate, it was dangerous. And if it was in a workbook that could be screenshot and dropped in a group chat, it meant we had a governance problem bigger than Victor's ego. But I didn't say any of that. Because at that moment, Victor's voice boomed over the speakers again. He was finishing his operational excellence speech, getting applause like he'd personally built the company with his bare hands. And right as the clapping started, I saw him glance toward the back of the room again, toward me, like he was checking whether I was still sitting behind the curtain. I didn't look away. I held his gaze, expression neutral. Victor's smile faltered for half a second. Then he looked down at his phone, and I watched his face change. It was subtle, but it was there. The tiny stiffening around his mouth, the flicker in his eyes. He'd seen the screenshot too. The applause died down. The CEO shook Victor's hand. People stood stretching, moving toward the bar. And suddenly, Victor wasn't gliding anymore. He was moving with purpose. He got off the stage and cut through the crowd straight toward the comm station, toward me. I met him halfway. He forced a laugh like he was about to turn this into another joke. Evan, he said, voice too friendly, too loud. What is this I'm hearing? Everyone's losing their minds over some screenshot. I didn't smile. I pulled my phone out, opened the image, and showed it to him without saying a word. Victor's eyes dropped to the number, then to my name, then to my employee ID. The color drained from his face so quickly it looked like someone had turned down the saturation. He tried to recover, tried to make his expression casual again, but his breathing changed, and in that moment I realized something that made my stomach turn colder than any insult. Victor didn't look scared because the number was big. Victor looked scared because he knew where it came from. He leaned in, lowering his voice. Okay, he said quickly. This is not what it looks like. Probably a mistaken pull, a misinterpretation. You requested a report, I said. His eyes narrowed. Excuse me? You requested a report last week, I continued calm. A report that included outside interests and wealth estimates. And now it's in the all-hands chat. Victor's smile vanished completely. Tasha, he snapped, not even looking at her. Who posted that? Tasha went stiff. I didn't. Victor turned back to me. Evan, listen. We need to shut this down before it becomes a legal thing. I almost laughed. He humiliated me in public. He used me as a punchline, and now he was worried about legal. I nodded once. Yes, we do. Victor exhaled like he thought I was agreeing to help him bury it. Good, he said. Then you understand we handle this quietly. We don't. I'm not handling anything quietly, I said. The words landed harder than I intended because Victor blinked like he hadn't heard me correctly. I'm not the one who posted it, I continued, voice controlled. But I'm also not the one who requested a wealth workbook and let it float around in a format that can be screenshotted. Victor's face tightened. Watch your tone, he said. That was the moment, right there, when the irritation turned into something else. Because it wasn't just the Gala seat anymore, it was the pattern. He'd decided I was small, so he treated me like a prop. He'd decided optics mattered more than people, so he moved pieces around like chess. And now that his little game touched something real, risk, exposure, consequences, he wanted me to play along. I didn't raise my voice, I didn't posture. I just asked the one question that made him freeze. "Victor," I said, "did you authorize pulling this data using my employee ID?" His eyes flicked left and right. He was checking who could hear. He leaned in again, voice sharp. "Not here." I nodded. "Then where?" Victor swallowed, and for the first time since he'd arrived at the company, he looked like he didn't know what move to make next. Because whatever answer he gave, there would be a record of it. And he could feel that. He tried to regain control with the oldest trick in management. He softened his voice and made it sound like concern. "Evan," he said, "I'm trying to protect you. People see a number like that, and they start making assumptions. They'll resent you. They'll target you. You know how this works." I stared at him. He wasn't trying to protect me. He was trying to protect himself from the moment the room stopped laughing and started asking where the screenshot came from. And that's when my phone buzzed again. Harder this time. Not the group chat, a direct message from someone I didn't expect. "Marisa, compliance." And the message was only one sentence. "Do not delete anything. We have questions." Victor didn't see it, but I did, and I realized in that second that the night wasn't ending with a joke. It was just beginning. My first thought was to ignore the message, not because I didn't take compliance seriously, because I knew exactly what "we have questions" usually meant. It meant someone had already pulled logs, already opened a case, already started building a timeline, and if your name is inside that timeline, you either become a witness or a suspect. I slid my phone back into my pocket and looked at Victor. He was still trying to manage the moment with his face, smiling too tightly, scanning the room, pretending the night was still under his control. But his eyes kept flicking toward people's phones, because the room had changed. A gala isn't really a party, it's a performance. And the second a private number hits a public group chat, the performance breaks. People stopped laughing and started whispering. Two directors leaned together like they were reading the same script. Someone from HR rushed past with their head down. Even the clients, who weren't supposed to know anything, picked up the shift in tone immediately. They didn't ask questions, they just watched. Victor lowered his voice again. "Evan, don't talk to anyone. Don't forward anything. Let me handle it." I held his gaze for a beat. Then I did something that felt small but wasn't. I stepped away from him without answering. Not aggressively, not theatrically, just refusing to be managed. I walked out of the ballroom into the hotel hallway where the music dulled and the carpet absorbed sound. The lighting out there was honest. No flattering glow, no champagne sparkle. Just beige walls and quiet signs pointing to conference rooms. That's where I finally opened Marisa's message again. "Do not delete anything. We have questions." I replied with one sentence. "I haven't deleted anything. Tell me where to go." Her response came almost instantly. "Executive lounge. 14th floor. Now." I didn't take the elevator with the crowd. I took the service elevator near the kitchen. The irony wasn't lost on me. By the time I reached the 14th floor, my hands still weren't shaking. But something inside me had shifted. Because suddenly I wasn't thinking about humiliation anymore. I was thinking about exposure. If the company had a workbook that could estimate employee net worth, tie it to employee IDs and cross-reference outside interests, then the gala wasn't the problem. The company's judgment was. The executive lounge was dim and quiet, the kind of place meant to feel private, even when it isn't. When I walked in, Marisa was already there with a laptop open, a legal pad beside it, and the posture of someone who'd been up late too many nights, cleaning up other people's mistakes. She didn't offer a drink. She didn't offer a smile. She gestured to a chair. "Evan, she said, calm but clipped. Before we start, do you understand why you're here? Yes, I said, because my personal financial data was distributed to a company-wide channel. Good, she said, and because it appears linked to internal systems. She paused, then looked directly at me. Did you authorize anyone to compile or disclose that information? No. Marissa nodded once, as if that was the answer she expected. Then she turned her screen toward me and slid her laptop slightly closer. On it was an export log, rows of data, timestamps, user IDs, file names. I recognized the file name immediately because it was the kind of name finance uses when they want something to sound harmless. Equity pass, exposure, risk, summary, final, v3.lsx. Marissa tapped one line with her pen. Your employee ID appears in the query parameters, she said, along with 36 others. The dataset was pulled 3 days ago. The export was downloaded twice. She tapped again. And then, 42 minutes ago, a screenshot was posted to the all-hands group chat. She didn't have to say it. But she did anyway. We need to know who touched it and why. I sat back slightly, letting it sink in. This wasn't gossip. This wasn't office drama. This was governance, privacy, potentially regulatory. And then Marissa said the thing that made my chest tighten, not with fear, something closer to disappointment. Victor Harlan requested this workbook, she said. Not had access, not received, requested. She continued. He submitted a request through Finance Ops, under the pretext of conflict of interest exposure and client optics. He asked for a short list of names. I stared at the screen. A short list. I wasn't just someone he humiliated at a gala. I was someone he had pre-selected. Marisa watched my face carefully. Do you know why he would include you? I could have given the simple answer. Because he's arrogant. Because he likes power. But the truth was more specific, and I could feel it now, connecting into a line I hadn't wanted to see. Victor didn't start targeting me at the gala. He started targeting me when he realized I wasn't dependent on him. I answered honestly. He asked about my role, I said, more than once. Not what I did, what I controlled, who I spoke to. How often clients called me instead of leadership. Marissa wrote something down, then she looked up again. Have you ever disclosed outside investments to the company? She asked. Yes, I said, when I joined. And again after my promotion 2 years ago. Everything's on file. Do you have access to your own disclosure forms? She asked. I nodded. I can pull them tonight. Marissa's voice stayed steady, but her eyes sharpened. Do it, she said, and send them to me, because Victor's request included a second component. I waited. She turned the laptop again, pulled up another document and pointed. A vendor name, a service contract, a checkbox, executive background screening, wealth and exposure estimate. I felt my stomach turn. So he used a screening vendor on employees? I said. Not legally, Marissa replied. Not with proper authorization. That's what we're determining. She closed the laptop halfway as if to keep the room from absorbing the words. Then she said quietly, Evan, this doesn't end with the group chat. And that was the moment the break happened for me. Because up until then, part of me still believed I could shrug it off, go home, wake up tomorrow, and pretend it was just one awful night. But it wasn't. The gala seat wasn't a mistake. The joke wasn't a joke. The screenshot wasn't an accident that just happened. It was the visible crack in something rotten underneath. Marissa slid a small evidence bag across the table. Clear plastic, numbered tag, the kind of thing you see in security training videos. Your badge, she said. I blinked. Why? Chain of custody, she replied. Not because you're in trouble, because we're limiting access while we freeze certain accounts. That sentence hit like ice water. Freeze accounts. This was bigger than Victor now. Bigger than my humiliation. This was a fire spreading through internal controls. And then she said something else. Something that should have been comforting but wasn't. Your calm is helping, she said. Most people in your position panic. I looked at her and finally admitted the truth I hadn't said out loud yet. I'm not calm, I said. I'm focused. Marissa nodded slowly, like she understood. Then she added one last detail, almost casually, like she was reading weather. We traced the screenshot path, she said. It was taken from a phone during Victor's speech, and it was posted by someone who was sitting at the executive table. That made my head lift. Who? I asked. Marissa didn't answer immediately. She stood up, collected her laptop, and only then said, I can't disclose names yet. She paused at the door and looked back at me. But if you're wondering whether Victor did this on purpose, she let the sentence hang for a beat. You're asking the right question. When she left, I sat there alone in a quiet lounge on the 14th floor, hearing the muffled sound of the Gala continuing below, like nothing was wrong. And that's when the realization landed fully. They didn't humiliate me because they hated me. They humiliated me because they thought I was safe to humiliate. They thought I would swallow it. They thought I would protect the company out of habit. That night, I opened my phone and did the one thing that stopped me from becoming the victim in their story. I created a folder. I named it Gala, and I saved everything. The Gala music was still playing when the company stopped acting like a company. It happened in layers. First, the all-hands chat went silent, the way a room goes quiet when everyone realizes the joke wasn't harmless. Then people started getting pulled aside in twos and threes, not friendly side conversations, the tight, urgent kind. Phones held low, eyes darting, smiles switching off. And then at 9:41 p.m., the hotel's executive lounge turned into an incident response room. When I walked back in, Marissa wasn't alone anymore. Two people from legal were there, one internal counsel I recognized from quarterly compliance training, and one outside attorney I didn't. The outside attorney had the posture of someone who charges by the hour and doesn't waste syllables. A security manager stood by the door with a clipboard, like this was a controlled site. Marissa nodded toward a chair. We're issuing a litigation hold, she said, effective immediately. The outside attorney slid a printed sheet toward me. Do not delete. Do not forward. Do not discuss outside counsel. Preserve all devices and records. In plain language, the company was officially afraid. I read it once, then looked up. You said the screenshot came from the executive table. Marissa didn't deny it. We're narrowing down the device. We're pulling MDM logs and message metadata. I knew what that meant. Corporate phones, managed devices, audit trails. If someone posted that screenshot from a company-managed phone, there would be fingerprints all over it. The internal counsel cleared his throat. Evan, we need your help establishing timeline. I didn't nod like a victim. I spoke like a witness. Victor approached me at the seating chart, I said. My placement note said special placement, per VP request. He referenced optics. Then he made the joke on stage. The screenshot hit within minutes. The outside attorney's pen moved fast. What time did Victor speak? She asked. About 9:15, I said. I can pull the exact time from the live stream if you want. Comms had a feed running. Marissa's eyes flicked to the security manager. Get the feed, she said. I reached into my pocket and took out my phone. Not trembling, just done pretending any of this was normal. I also have notes, I said, and opened my notes app. I wrote down what he said when it happened. The outside attorney looked at me for the first time like I wasn't a problem to manage. Send those to Marissa, she said, now. I airdropped the note to Marissa's laptop. Then I added, I can also send you my disclosures. Everything Victor implied I should have shared. It's already on file. Marissa didn't look surprised. Good, she said, because he's claiming he didn't request any wealth estimate. I stared at her. He's denying it? He's denying intent, the internal counsel corrected carefully, which is the kind of distinction lawyers make when they already know the truth, and they're just choosing the battlefield. My phone buzzed again, not the all-hands chat this time. A text from someone on the client side. Daniel Ross, Greystone Capital. We'd worked with Greystone for years. Their renewal was up in Q1. High value, high visibility. The kind of account people like Victor love to mention while having no idea who actually kept it alive. The message was short. Are you okay? Seeing chatter about your company? Call when you can. My throat went tight, not from fear, from anger, not because Daniel cared about my feelings, because he was seeing something, and if he was seeing something, others were too. I showed Marisa the message. Her expression hardened. That's escalation, she said. Then she turned to the security manager. We need device collection at the executive table. The security manager nodded like he'd been waiting for permission, and that's when the chaos moved downstairs. We went back into the ballroom through a side entrance. From the edge, I watched it happen like a slow-motion collapse. Security and legal approached the executive table with professional calm. No shouting, no drama. Just the kind of quiet authority that makes powerful people feel powerless. Phones were requested. Not asked for, requested. A few execs laughed nervously like it was a prank. But when the outside attorney said, "This is a litigation hold," the laughter died. Victor was there, still in his tux, still trying to wear leadership on his face. He stood halfway up from his chair and raised his hands slightly, as if to calm the room. Let's not overreact, he said, smiling. This is an internal misunderstanding. Marisa didn't smile back. Victor, she said, you'll come with us. His smile froze. Excuse me? You'll come with us, she repeated. Now. For a second, Victor looked around, searching for support. CEO, CFO, anyone. But the executive table had turned into a line of people staring at their plates, because nobody wanted to be the person who defended him while their phone was being bagged, like evidence. Victor's eyes landed on me at the edge of the room. There was a flash of something there. Anger, calculation, and then a sharper emotion when he realized I wasn't seated behind a curtain anymore. I was standing, watching, and I wasn't alone. He walked toward me before Marisa could steer him away. He stopped close enough that I could smell the bourbon on his breath. You did this, he hissed, low and venomous. I didn't flinch. I didn't step back. I said the only thing that mattered. I didn't post your workbook, I replied. I didn't request it. I didn't joke about seating someone behind a curtain. That was you. Victor's jaw tightened. You think your little notes make you untouchable? That's when I realized what he still didn't understand. This wasn't about protecting me. This was about proving what kind of leader he was when he thought nobody could challenge him. I leaned in just enough that he could hear me, over the music. You wanted optics, I said. Now you have them. Marisa stepped between us. Victor, with me. And for the first time all night, he didn't have a choice. They walked him out through the side corridor. Not handcuffed, not dragged, but escorted the way a company escorts someone when the story is flipped, and no one wants to be seen standing next to them. As they passed the curtain where my table had been, I watched Victor glance at it, like he was finally registering the symbolism, and I felt a small, sharp release in my chest. Not joy, not revenge, just a single clean truth. They thought I was gone. I wasn't. Back upstairs, the outside attorney took a call, listened, then covered the phone and looked at Marisa. We have confirmation, she said. Marisa's eyes narrowed. From where? The attorney looked at me briefly, then back to Marisa. Message metadata, she said. The screenshot in the all-hands chat originated from a device assigned to Victor's chief of staff. The room went still, because that wasn't an accident. That was proximity to power. That was access. And most importantly, if Victor's chief of staff posted it, then either she did it to impress him, or she did it because she was told. Marisa exhaled slowly, like she'd just reached the point where the case stopped being messy and started being clear. She looked at me. Evan, she said, legal wants your client contact logs for Greystone and any written communication where Victor requested that report. I nodded. You'll have it, I said. Then I added, because I wasn't going to be passive in my own story. And I want a copy of every record you have that ties my employee ID to any vendor screening. Marissa held my gaze. "You'll get it," she said. My phone buzzed again. A new message, this time from Daniel at Greystone. "Board member just texted me. They're asking who owns the relationship. Call me now." I stared at the screen, feeling the last illusion dissolve. Victor didn't just light a fire inside the company. He lit one outside it, and Greystone wasn't asking about Victor. They were asking about me. I didn't call Daniel from the ballroom. I called him from the hallway outside the executive lounge, where the hotel's marble and silence made everything feel sharp. Because if Greystone's board was asking who owned the relationship, that meant the only thing that ever mattered in corporate power was finally being measured correctly. Not titles, not stage time, not optics. Control. Daniel answered on the second ring. "Evan," he said, no small talk, "tell me what's happening." "I can't give you internal details," I said, "but I can tell you this. I'm still your point person, and I'm not going anywhere." There was a pause, just long enough to hear him exhale. "Good," he said, "because Victor's been calling my team all night, not you. He's calling like he's trying to get ahead of something." That confirmed what I already suspected. Victor wasn't trying to fix damage. He was trying to reframe it. Daniel continued, quieter now. "A board member saw the screenshot. People are asking whether your firm has governance issues, and one of them asked me, directly, if you're the one who has been keeping this relationship stable." I didn't brag. I didn't make it about ego. I answered like a professional. "I've been the continuity," I said, "not alone. But yes, if you're asking whether I can keep this clean and stable through a transition, I can." Daniel didn't hesitate. "Then I want that in writing," he said. "Not for me. For our board packet. They're going to ask what we do if your company's leadership gets messy." I looked through the glass wall of the lounge at Marissa and the attorneys, heads together over laptops, building their own packet. Two worlds moving at once. "Send me the request," I said. "I'll respond with what you need. Fact-based." "Do it tonight," Daniel said, "because tomorrow morning your CEO is going to get a call he doesn't want." I ended the call and went back inside. Marissa was standing by the window, phone to her ear, listening with the expression of someone hearing facts that confirm every concern they already had. When she hung up, she looked at me and said, "We just suspended Victor's access." "Good," I said. She studied me. "You're taking this. Better than most." I gave a small nod. I stopped hoping it would be fair. Now I just want it clean. That got a faint, almost tired smile from the outside attorney. "Clean is expensive," she said, "but cheaper than messy." Marissa slid a document across the table to me. It was an internal notice draft, going to the executive team first, then to the broader org. No names yet. No accusations. Just process. Potential data privacy incident under investigation. Litigation hold, in effect. Underneath it, a second document. A direct instruction for a small group of employees. Effective immediately, all client communications for Greystone will be routed through Evan Carter. I stared at that line for a second longer than I meant to. Not because it felt like victory. Because it felt like reality finally catching up. "What prompted this?" I asked. Marissa didn't sugarcoat it. Greystone reached out. They asked who actually owns the relationship. They asked if they should pause renewal until we can demonstrate controls. "And," I said, "and the CEO realized Victor isn't the one who can answer that question," Marissa said. "You are." There was a quiet satisfaction in that. Not petty, not loud. A calm kind of justice. The kind that doesn't need applause. The internal counsel cleared his throat. "Evan, we'll need one more thing, a statement." "About the gala?" I asked. "About impact," he said. "What was said, what was done, and how it affected your standing. Not emotionally, professionally." I nodded. "I can do that." The outside attorney added, "And we'll need you available Monday. There may be board involvement." That's when it hit me that this had moved beyond compliance. Board involvement is what happens when executive behavior threatens money. And Greystone, was money. A lot of it. I sent Daniel the written confirmation he requested. Tight, factual, zero drama. Then I sent Marissa my disclosures, my role description, and the client contact logs. Everything, no missing pieces. No room for someone to interpret me into a corner. At 11:18 p.m., Marissa's laptop chimed with an incoming message. She read it. Her face didn't change much, but her eyes sharpened. "What?" the internal counsel asked. Marissa looked up. "Victor's chief of staff just requested counsel," she said, "and she's offering cooperation." The outside attorney's pen stopped. "That means she's distancing," she said. Marissa nodded. "It also means she's scared." I stayed quiet, but my mind did the math. If the chief of staff cooperated, Victor wouldn't just lose face. He'd lose narrative control. And for someone like Victor, narrative is the only currency that matters. At 11:47 p.m., the CEO walked into the lounge. Not on stage, not smiling, no entourage, just a man in a tux with the weight of consequences on his shoulders. He looked at Marissa first, then at the attorneys, and finally, at me. "Evan," he said, voice low, "I owe you an apology." I didn't rush to accept it. I didn't argue either. I said, "I'm listening." He swallowed. "Victor told us you weren't client-facing, that you preferred staying in the background. He said seating you away from the spotlight would be more comfortable for you." I held his gaze. "That's not what he said to me," I replied. The CEO nodded once, like that was the confirmation he feared. Marissa stepped in. "We have documentation contradicting his version," she said. The CEO exhaled. Then he said the sentence that made the whole night feel like it finally had an ending. "Victor is being placed on administrative leave effective immediately," he said, "pending investigation." No cheering, no gasp, just a quiet click in my head. Like a lock turning, the CEO continued. "And we're going to make this right. The data incident, the gala, all of it." He paused, then added almost reluctantly, "Greystone's board asked for you by name." I nodded. "I spoke with them," I said. "They want continuity." The CEO looked relieved, and I hated that he looked relieved, because it meant he'd needed the threat of losing money to see what he'd allowed. But that wasn't my battle tonight. My battle was making sure there were no loose ends. "So here's what I need," I said calmly. "A written acknowledgement that the wealth estimate was unauthorized, a written plan for remediation, and confirmation that my employee ID won't be used in any third-party screening without explicit consent." The room went still, because it's not common for the guy seated behind the curtain to speak like that. But the CEO didn't push back. He nodded. "You'll have it." Then he looked at Marissa. "And we need to get ahead of this before Monday." Marissa's answer was immediate. "We already are." When the CEO left, the outside attorney gathered her papers. "We're done for tonight," she said. "Go home. Do not talk about this. Keep your files. Monday will be structured." I left the hotel alone. No dramatic exit, no victory lap, just the cold air outside, the city quieting down, and my own thoughts finally slowing. On the ride home, the group chat, which had been screaming an hour earlier, posted one final message. A system admin announcement, pinned. Reminder, sharing personal employee data is a violation of policy. The incident is under investigation. Please preserve any related materials. And under it, someone replied, someone I barely knew, "I owe Evan an apology." Then another, "Same?" Then another. We all laughed. That's on us. I stared at the screen, not feeling triumphant, just finished. Because the real satisfaction wasn't them apologizing, it was something quieter. Victor tried to make me small in public. And instead, he put a spotlight on the one thing he couldn't fake. Who actually held the relationships? Who actually held the trust? Who actually held the leverage? By the time I got home, the missed calls started. Not from Victor, not from HR. From numbers I recognized, clients, people who didn't care about the gala, the jokes, the politics, people who cared about stability. I let the phone ring once, Then I answered the first call calmly. "Hey," I said, "it's Evan. I'm here." And for the first time all night, I felt something close to peace. Not because I won, because the story was finally honest, and it was over.